model, Kabbalistic model that's like really like special. I think it's clear, but my wife told me it wasn't. So
Then it's clear.
maybe I said it too quickly. She said leave out that part. So maybe I'll start by leaving out that part, and then we'll save that part for later, because that part is, I think, especially interesting. Okay. So let's just talk about this idea. It says, a lot of people, when they quote, let there be light, they quote it like this. They say, Vayehi or, right? Everyone knows that. Like a lot of times, I remember like when I first got married, anytime my wife would turn on the light in a dark room, she would say, Vayehi or, right? So we somehow have been conditioned to think that Vayehi or is a complete thought, but it's not. If you actually look in the Torah, it says Yehi or, Vayehi or. There's a very crucial vav in there. Yehi or, vav, Vayehi or. Okay, now that vav, as you know, is very, very important, because we have Yud and Hey and Vav, which draws down the light from the upper realms into the bottom Hey, which is this realm. So that's our job, to draw down. We're the vav. A human being is in the shape of a vav. We're the vav that draws down the light into this world. So when God made the world, you have the heavens, and then you have the heavens of the heavens, and then you have the physical universe, and it's all one continual spectrum. A lot of people don't realize that the Torah is actually being quite literal. We have this phrase that we read all the time. It's in Tehillim, it's in the Torah. It says, Shemei Hashamayim. That means the heavens have heavens. That's what that means. The heavens of the heavens. It's not poetry. It's geography. Do you understand? That there's above us, there's heaven, and then the heavens have heavens. So the light goes all the way up. And sometimes this is referred to as olomos, meaning spiritual realms. Okay? Olomos means worlds, but that means spiritual realms. Okay. So what's the idea? The idea is that you have this heavenly light, Yehi or, that's the heavenly light, beyond this world. And then it says, Vayehi or. We're the Vav. We have to pull down that heavenly light into this world and create light amidst the darkness. In the above realms, you don't have darkness. So it's just Yehi or, it's just light. But then we bring it down, Vayehi, we're the Vav, and then we create light amidst the darkness. Okay, by the way, in case you were wondering, was that the confusing part? That wasn't the confusing part, that was the clear part. So I hope you're all with me for that. Yeah? Everyone follows? Okay, good. Now I'm going to tell you something wild. Listen to this. Who is the light? Who is the light? So the answer is Abraham. Abraham is the light. Okay? And by the way, if you want me to give you a defense of that, a defense of that, when Moshe Rabbeinu, because you could say, well, wait a second, I thought it was Moshe. Well, it's going to sort of become Moshe in a second. But anyway, when Moshe goes up to get the Torah from the angels want to attack Moshe. They don't want to give Moshe the Torah. Okay? The Medrash says, do you know what God did? He gave Moshe the face of Avraham. And he said to the angels, this is the person who gave you hospitality? Remember, because Abraham gives hospitality to the angels. And this is how you're treating him? And so the angels were ashamed, and they allowed Moshe to get the Torah. So in other words, even Moshe needs the face of Abraham. Okay? So it really all starts with Abraham. Now when you're talking about this initial light, by the way, when God hides that initial light, where does God hide it? Do you know where one of the main places God hides it? Is in the soul of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu becomes a repository, like this giant kli for that initial light. But that's a little bit later. It really begins with Abraham. Now listen to this. I told you, you've got Yehi or, and then vayehi or. This heavenly light, this supernatural light, is going to come down into the world, but at a certain point, it's going to become the light of the sun. In other words, we don't have that light that's in Shemayim here. We have the light that comes from the sun or the stars, right? Or is reflected off the moon. Is that clear? Do you hear the difference? So how does it go exactly? In other words, are there two lights? Like, how does it go? You've got this heavenly light, and then all of a sudden you've got the light of the sun. So I'm going to tell you how it goes. Okay. So basically, the sun is the capital of the natural order. That's it. When you talk about Teva, when you talk about nature, the laws of nature, where is the capital of the laws of nature? And the answer is the sun. Okay? Now here's what happens. The heavenly light goes through the sun. And then when the light comes out of the sun, that heavenly light turns into the light that we see around us. It becomes an earthly light. And that's the transition. And the sun is the repository of the 7 constellations. So that basically all of nature is contained within the sun. So when the heavenly light comes down into this world, it flows through the sun, and all of a sudden the nature of the light changes into the light that we see around us, which, by the way, is a joke compared to the heavenly light.
Wait, can you clarify the 7 constellations? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so there is a natural order, also called the 7 constellations, or, you know, these are, I'm sorry, or the 7 planets. Maybe that's a term that's more recognizable. And that's considered sort of like the anchors above. But all of the anchors in that sphere above that the heavenly light trickles through are all condensed within the sun itself. Okay? Is that clear? Okay. All right, but I didn't get to the cool part. I just got from the transition of Yehi or Vayehi or. We're back to that, right? In this case now, the sun will be the Vav. Yehi or, right? That's the heavenly light. Vayehi, it's drawing it down into this world, into a natural light, which is the light of the sun. Everyone with me? You all following? Okay. Now let's get back to Abraham. Listen to this. I'm going to give you a totally, mind-expanding way to understand the following verse in the Torah. You'll never, if you pay attention, you'll never think about it the same way again. Abraham gets a bris. He gets the orla cut off of him, this spiritual blockage, his physical element to his being, his physicality. Gets a piece of it chopped off, right? He cuts it off himself. And then what does it say? It was a super hot day, a burning hot day, and he sat by the opening in his tent. He sat by the opening in his tent. Now, what do those things have in common? And what does it have to do with the whole discussion of the sun? The flowing of the heavenly light to the earthly light. What does that have to do with the fact that Abraham cut off his orla and is sitting by the opening of his tent? Well, I'm going to tell you. It's exactly what we were talking about. We're just going to fill in a detail. You see, there's such a concept called the inside of the sun. The inside of the sun is the supernatural order. And then you have something called the outside of the sun. Right? And that's called the natural order. So now, let's just return back to the model that we've been saying. We're just adding one small piece here. When the heavenly light flows through the sun, when it's on the inside of the sun, it's still supernatural. When it gets to the outside of the sun, it becomes natural. Now, guess who is associated with the supernatural aspect of the inside of the sun? Avraham. Okay? And now pay attention, because this is the big finish right now. It says, Avraham cut off his orla, right? This blockage, this physical blockage on him, and he sat by the opening of his tent. There is an opening in the sun. The outside of the sun has an opening. That is the opening of the tent of Avraham, where the inside light of the sun can flow out of the sun and still remain supernatural. In other words, most of the inside light of the sun, when it comes outside the sun, becomes the light of the sun, the natural order. But there is this thing called the opening of Abraham's tent that he sat in front of, which is associated with him cutting off his orla. He cut off a piece of the natural order and allowed the supernatural light to flow into this world. Did you follow? Any questions? Ask a question, because
So
I
both
want
types
to
of
make
light
sure
are
that you
coming.
understand.
The supernatural light comes from the opening
Yes.
of the tent,
Yes.
which is like the aura.
Yes,
And
and
then
that's
the natural
the
light just comes from the rest of the outside of the sun.
right. And most of it is the outside of the sun.
Got it.
But there is this little section here, which is the pathway where you can, in the natural world that where we live, you have an avenue to access the supernatural entrance to the heavens of the heavens. And that's through this opening in the sun, which is associated with the orla that we cut off. That's the path of the Torah that allows us to access the supernatural amidst the natural. Ask a question if you're not following, because I want this to be clear. This should be clear. Yitzi, you following?
Yeah.
Is there a
Yes.
Hebrew term that goes for the supernatural light? What is the?
Okay, so the inside light of the sun would be the panemius, right? And they talk about the sun, the sun being unsheathed. Have you heard that phrase?
No.
So like when you unsheathe a sword goes into a scabbard, right? And you pull it out from its case. They talk about the inside of the sun like a sword being pulled out. The inside light is going to be pulled out in the end of days, and it's going to heal all the sick and absolutely vaporize all the wicked. Because the wicked will not be able to stand in front of the light of the sun, the inside light of the sun, the true justice, right? True heavenly light. But it would be the panemius, that would be the inside. Okay. So now let's relate these ideas to what's going on in the world right now. First of all, I have to tell you something. I'm sure many of you are following this, and I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed at this. And there's two places that this has happened right now that it's like really in the news on a regular basis right now. NYU Law School and Harvard, right? And I'm seeing heads nodded, so you're probably following this. Harvard published a letter saying that this is what happened in Israel is 100% the fault of the Israel. And 30 or 31 organizations, undergraduate organizations, signed this letter. And there was silence from the Harvard administration. When they responded to the whole George Floyd, Black Lives Matter thing, the president of the university issued a letter. When Russia invaded the Ukraine, there was a letter and maybe even a visit of the president of Harvard to the Ukraine. Or at least he talked about going. I don't know if he went. So very public statements. Utter silence in the face of 31 undergraduate organizations saying it's 100% Israel's fault. Lawrence Summers, a former president of Harvard and a former secretary of the Treasury, like a big dude, like a major dude, says, I am disgusted with you, Harvard. I'm disgusted with you. I'm disgusted with your silence. I've never felt more alienated. The next day, the president of Harvard issued a statement, and it was a very strong statement, I thought, which was, no undergraduate organization, not even 31 undergraduate organizations, speaks for us. And we are abhorred by the violence that took place. Okay, but it gets better. The story gets better. A major CEO, business guy who runs a major hedge fund, said, I've been approached by other CEOs, and we want a list of all the students of all the organizations who signed that letter so that we can make sure that we don't hire any of them by accident. Now, all of a sudden, the discussion started to change. And you had student organizations going, I didn't read it, I didn't know, they didn't ask me, I absolutely am sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings. These things starting to come out. Okay, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. But today, and you can read about it in the New York Post today, it reached one last step, which was unbelievable. They started driving a truck around Harvard with video screens showing the faces of every single person in all of the organizations that signed that letter, with big letters over Harvard's leading anti-Semites, and driving it around Harvard with the faces of the people who were members of the organization who signed this letter. This is unprecedented. This is absolutely unprecedented. Now, I'll give you the NYU story. There's a very radical woman named Rena, who apparently they looked into it. She changed her name because she got in some trouble earlier in her life. Her name isn't actually Rena, but she goes by Rena now, okay? Who wrote this, the president of the student, the SBA, what does that stand for?
Bar Association.
It was the student
The
bar
Student Bar Association.
Bodies.
Student Bar Association.
Bar law. Oh, law school.
For law school. She wrote a letter. If it had been penned by Hamas, it could not have been more radical. And I am not exaggerating. And she just wrote it as her president's letter on the weekly email.
Or Halloween decorations.
Right? There were Halloween
It was like a
decorations.
cute, like,
Okay, great. Yeah.
newsletter.
Yeah, I saw the graphics because they showed the thing. Yeah, it's like kind of a like friendly and like surprisingly colorful thing with the most hate-filled thing against Israel. Anyway, then you see something where one of the top law firms in New York, which had hired her, publicly rescinded their job offer to her. And then the next day, all of a sudden, the people in the, they said, we're not going to get jobs. What the hell? They started saying, she doesn't speak for us, and we are initiating her impeachment as president under Article this, that, and the other thing, and all of the rest. There's a sickness, a moral sickness that everyone's writing about. I'm not saying anything new or controversial here. A moral sickness that's going on college campuses right now, where the identification with the oppressed has gone so out of whack, or their perception of the oppressed has gotten so absolutely out of whack that it's gone right into the furnace of Gehenna, right into manifestations and expressions of evil itself. Now, just tell you, just as an aside, just in case you don't know, because it's good, everyone should just have this as their own literacy, their own everyone should just know this, okay? How did this happen that all of a sudden every college organization who identifies with the oppressed is all of a sudden a fan of the Palestinians when their organization has nothing to do with the Palestinians? How did that happen? So it'll take me 2 minutes, but you should know this. There's something called intersectionality. You should know that word, intersectionality, because you need to be armed with some, like a little meat if you're ever going to have a conversation with someone who's like, quote unquote educated, right? Like we talk about the enlightenment, which I like to call the endarkenment, right? Which is like just turning everything upside down. But anyway, here is what intersectionality is. It started, believe it or not, with feminism. Feminism was basically standing up for the rights of women and this, that, and the other thing. And then all of a sudden, all of these like other women in the world said, you're all rich white women saying that you're being mistreated. What about all the actual women all around the world who are being genuinely oppressed? You call yourself a feminist? You're not a feminist. You're advocating for your own rich white stance. Stand up for all women if you're going to be a feminist. And thus was born intersectionality, which means that you could not stand up for any people or anything that's oppressed unless you stood up for every other oppressed person in that category that you were representing. And somehow the Palestinians became the model and epitome of those who are oppressed, and therefore in every liberal thinking person's category, they instantly became best friends and identified with the Palestinians. That's how it happened. If you're wondering, how did they conquer liberal thought? What was their pathway to doing it? Intersectionality, now you know, okay? But now it's reached literally its logical absurdity. It's because you have people rushing to defend, and I don't need to talk about the litany of horrors that they committed. And by the way, something, I listened to a commentator who, says very good things, and I don't want to mention his name because I'm going to say something against him right now. And I don't know that he was necessarily, bless you, I don't know that he was necessarily talking to the people in this room when he said this. But he said, I'm going to show you these videos, and I want you to look into the face of evil, and you need to see the face of evil, and you need to watch this. And he must have said it 10 times, okay? You don't need to look into the face of evil. In fact, there's an idea that you don't look into a wicked man's face. Even like in a newspaper thing, so-and-so murdered so-and-so. You don't even look at his face because it can have an effect on you. So if that's the case, that you don't look into the face of a wicked man, how could it be that you're supposed to watch these clips of 1,000 times worse? I heard many people use this phrase, I can't unsee that. I can't unsee that. Well, yes, you're right, you can't unsee it, which is why you shouldn't look at it to begin with. We know it exists. We know it exists. Now I want to talk about an irony that's taking place right now. That's sort of like so upsetting and so kind of almost intractable. But just let's put words to it so that we can just understand what's going on. There's such a thing as a righteous war, right? Today we want to say war bad, right? War bad, peace good, right? But what does it say in Koheles? What does Shlomo HaMelech say? There's a time for peace and there's a time for war. The idea of war is a Torah concept when it's the right moment. That war has to come. Can you imagine if people said about Hitler, Yamach Shemo? By the way, I heard something amazing. They said, someone tweeted this. If you want to know whose side to be on, ask yourself, whose side would Hitler be on? Right? So can you imagine if we said in World War II to Hitler, war is bad? So there you see the absurdity of this idea, and you see that the Torah concept that there is a time for war when it's the right time is absolutely justified, right? Okay. But now let's get into the politics of today. I don't know if you saw this clip. This clip was going around. It was an amazing clip. You had this incredibly handsome, elegant English news host, right? Beautiful suit, so well spoken. I mean, like, this guy was like, wow, you know? Interviewing Naftali Bennett. Naftali Bennett was in a black t-shirt, he was standing outside, just ready to like grab someone and just, he was just in it. And the clip that I saw was like into the interview. And this very well-heeled, incredibly elegant man said, and young man too, which somehow gave him even more sort of like, charisma and authority, said, yes, but remember, this is the middle of the interview. Yes, but what about the dying children, Palestinian children in the hospitals that are going to die because of the electricity that's going to run out? And Naftali said, you keep on going back to that. And then they get into an argument, and then this man says, with the most authority, right? He said, this is my show. I am the host. I will not have you speaking over me. We are trying to have an intelligent conversation. These are nuanced topics. And meanwhile, in the background, Naftali Bennett is yelling, and you think, okay, this is the end. Like, no one in the face of this level of elegance is going to be able to withstand it. And then when he gets through his whole spiel, Naftali's back, just comes up again. And it's like rising from the dead. You can't believe that he is still in this argument. And he says, you hypocrite, we're talking about fighting Nazis right now. You in England bombed Dresden and you took out the entire city. Now, I don't know if you know about Dresden. I've heard about Dresden, but I just kind of did a little Dresden research today. And basically, Dresden was this incredibly historically important city in Germany. Beautiful architecture, beautiful art, a cultural capital. And basically, it pretty much got to the end of World War II without being touched. And everyone thought, no one's going to touch Dresden. It's too beautifully and historically important. They wiped it off the map. England and America, but England leading the charge, wiped it off the map. Let me tell you how much they wiped it off the map, okay? Because I looked up how many people died in Dresden. So listen to this, because this is wild, okay? It says 25 to 35,000 people or 250,000 people. Now, how do you get a spread like that? Do you know how you get a spread like that? Because they vaporize them. That's how you get a spread like that. That's how you get a spread like that. Because at a certain point, they're like, we don't know. We don't know. That basically, through conventional bombs, they created an effect that was tantamount to a nuclear bomb dropping. That's what happened in Dresden. And that's what the English did when they were getting rid of the Nazis. Okay, now let's take a half step forward right now, because this is where it gets more complicated. That's how war was classically fought. And of course, dropping the bomb on Nagasaki and Hiroshima, okay, that's all kind of part of this. Enter the Geneva Conventions. Geneva Conventions seem like a fantastic idea, especially if they almost tried to commit genocide against you, which is us. Which said, guys, you know what? We're adults now. We're a little more civilized than the cavemen. What if we initiated the idea of an ethical code of warfare? You can't do this to citizens. You can't do this to hostages. You can't do this under these circumstances. We're going to make laws for warfare. What do you think? And the world went, yeah, that's good, because we've seen all these atrocities. If this is going to stop the atrocities, this sounds pretty good. So here's where it gets complicated. Because do you know who hides behind these laws? Evil itself. It's good when it's actually protecting the evil people from attacking the good people. But what happens like right now when the good people actually have to eradicate the evil? What happens then? And that's where we are right now. Because we're in this very morally tricky, in terms of contemporary politics, way of basically doing justice and doing the right thing, but it's a little bit out of whack with where contemporary culture is right now, which is, okay, that's enough. Now you can stop. No. That's collective punishment. That's a disproportionate response. No. Now you got to stop, or you're going to be the evil ones. But we have to reject that argument. We have to reject that argument. Because at a certain point, evil cannot be allowed to hide behind quote unquote good. It has to be fully eradicated. And that's where we are right now. And that's, classically speaking, how war was fought over the years. Which is why war is so horrible, but why Shlomo HaMelech says there's a time for peace and a time for war. Because under certain circumstances, when we're talking about a Moloch, you just gotta see it all the way through. You gotta see it all the way through. So just to end on this one point, which is, I saw another interview, another clip that was going around, an Israel foreign affairs expert, an Israeli guy, and the interviewer said, "Are you surprised by the savagery of the Palestinians, the Gazans who came in and what they did?" And he said, "No, I'm not surprised by that at all. But I am surprised by one thing." He said, what are you surprised for? Now, this is a seasoned war veteran, Israel reporter, someone who's sat with Arafat. I mean, this guy has experience. And he said, personally, how is it that wall, which had every technological defense on it, how did that fall down? How were they able to breach that wall? He said, that's what shocks me. You know what they called the Titanic? The Titanic had a nickname. It was called the unsinkable ship. And you know when it sank? Its first time out. Its maiden voyage, it sank. It was literally called by everyone the unsinkable ship. The Twin Towers? I grew up in New York. Those things are never coming down. You're crazy? Impossible. It came down. This wall where they're drones, and if you touch it, a fist comes out and punches you in the face. I mean, whatever you can think of, and it went all the way down so that you couldn't tunnel underneath it. I mean, every Israeli Jewish genius bit of technology that you could put into a wall, drones automatically, get launched. It didn't work. Now, why didn't it work? And there's a very simple answer. Because Hashem withdrew our shmirah. He withdrew, Hashem did. Hashem withdrew our shmirah, our protection. Now, why did he withdraw our protection? I don't know. I'm not a prophet. I don't know. I'll suggest the following, though, and take it with a grain of salt, and it doesn't even matter if what I'm saying is right or not. It doesn't even matter. But the Jewish people were very, very divided. And one thing that all of these attacks have done, it's like advanced surgery, is God has put us back together in the most serious way. And now that we see ourselves coming back together in the most amazing way, all of a sudden, I don't know if you saw this news item. the plan of the Palestinians who came in was to hold a chunk of territory in Israel. They were supposed to have a beachhead in Israel. And as soon as we came together, just all of a sudden, things started happening. A unity government? You think that's just politics? That's not just politics. That is a very, very powerful thing that's happening right now. That it's another sign that the heart of the government is coming together. And of course, everybody knows the hearts of the people are all coming together in the most amazing way. And now there's going to be a lot of healing, and there's a lot more stuff that's ahead. But as we come more and more together, you're going to see a re-establishment of the shmira and of the protection and of the divine hand going out in front of us. And what we have to do is just keep on bringing yourself together, and more you're going to see the results on the battlefield itself. Okay.